This video is presented by Sailrite. If you have patio sling furniture and you need to replace the cover, you may want to consider making one yourself using material from Sailrite. This high-back chair has damaged fabric. We're going to replace it with brand new fabric called Phifertex Plus, seen here. It's not very difficult to replace sling patio furniture covers. The first step is to take a few measurements. We'll take a length measurement following the contour of the chair, and we'll take a top width and a bottom width measurement. Write those measurements down. We'll be using a Phifertex Plus material that we purchased from Sailrite. We'll use a square here to straighten the cut edge prior to making our measurement marks on the fabric. This Phifertex Plus material marks easily with a standard pen. The fabric can also be cut with scissors. No need to worry about unraveling. The width of our chair on the top and the bottom was 19 inches. We'll want to add a 1/4 inch to each one of the sides for the insertion of a rope cord that'll go in a sleeve. So in the end, it'll be 19.5 inches. To create the sleeve, we need to add 1.75 inches to each side. That will create the sleeve for the rope cord. Your chair's measurements may be different. So our finished width is 19.5. We need to add 1.75 on both sides. That means we need to mark it here at 23 inches on our application. On our fabric blank, this is the Phifertex Plus material. We're marking it at 23 inches. Your measurements may be slightly different. Then we use a yardstick with a pen and mark a straight line and then cut it with shears. We have not yet discussed the length of the fabric. Obviously you want the length to be longer than our actual length because we're going to create a 1-inch hem at the top and the bottom, but we're going to do that in a later step. Now we're going to concentrate on taking apart the chair. You'll typically find some bolts on the back side and on the underside of the chair. Remove those bolts. Our bolts are protected with an end cap. We're going to pop those off and then just gain access to the actual bolt, and we're just using a drill and a socket set to remove each one of those. That will separate the fabric frame from the main frame. On the back side of this frame, there's some tension bars. Those are used to tension the fabric. First, we're going to use a razor blade, cut the assembly, the old assembly, apart so we can remove the old fabric from the channel that the rope cord runs into. The tension bars are not screwed in place. They simply slide into a hole. We'll remove those and set those aside. Be careful with the end cap, as if your chair has been out in the sun for a while, they may be slightly brittle. So gently pry up the end caps on each one of those channel ends. With a second person's help, use a pair of pliers and pull the old fabric out of both sides of the channel. You can then use pliers to pull the rope cord out of the sleeve of our old cover. We can reuse this rope cord in the new cover. If you choose to buy new rope cording, the rope cording should be about a 1/4 inch. You have already taken a length measurement from the chair, but it's a good idea to verify that length measurement using the old one as a pattern. We'll now transfer that measurement to our fabric pattern. However, we want to add an inch extra on each end for a hem. The finished length of our chair was 47 inches, so we're marking it here at 49 inches. We'll use a pen and draw a straight line across it, and then we'll cut it to the appropriate length. Now at each of the short ends, we're going to create that 1-inch hem. There's no need to do a double hem, just a single hem here will work fine. So we've marked the fabric at 1 inch and we create a hem here. You'll notice that the Phifertex material creases nicely. It's always a good idea to use a heavy object to crease it a little bit sharper so that when you take it to the sewing machine, it folds exactly on top of that crease that you created. We're going to use the UltraFeed LS1 sewing machine, and we're also using the magnetic sewing guide to help guide our stitch. And we're going to sew a straight stitch approximately 6 millimeters in length. There's no need to reverse at the beginning or the end here because we're actually going to create a sleeve on each of the long edges. If you do not have the magnetic sewing guide, you can always put a piece of masking tape down on the bed of the sewing machine and use that as a guide. Or you can just follow one of the presser feet as a guide to keep your stitch nice and straight. We've sewed one row here. We're actually going to take this assembly and put it back into the sewing machine and sew another row of straight stitches right next to the previous, about a 1/4 inch away. Here's what the first stitch looks like. We'll move the magnetic guide so that our next stitch is approximately a 1/4 inch away from the first stitch. That first stitch should be pretty close to the raw edge of the fabric to keep it down. Once we finish this stitch, then we'll concentrate on the other end. It's always a good idea to re-measure to be sure that your fabric length is appropriate.
I'm going to go a little bit shorter than 47 inches. I'd rather be too short than too long.
We know the length of our chair is 47 inches. However, it's not a bad idea to be a 1/4 inch short of that, because if the fabric is too long, it won't fit well in the sleeve. Be sure to create the hem on the same side as the opposite end. So we're going to create a hem here, and this hem is obviously just a little bit longer than 1 inch because we made the fabric blank a little bit shorter than our 47 inch length. Now we sew that in the same as we did the previous. We skipped that step. We didn't show that in the video. Now on the long edges where we want to create the sleeve for the rope cord, we mark the fabric 1 3/4 inch as we discussed earlier. Then we draw a straight line down that, and we'll use that line to crease the fabric. You really can't tell from this video, but the hem is facing down, so we're going to flip this fabric over and we're going to fold it in the same side that the hems on the ends were placed, and we're going to crease along that line. So the line was placed on the opposite side of the fabric. And now we'll just follow the line and crease it well. And to really make sure the crease is set, we'll use a hard object like scissors to ensure that it stays there when we take it to the sewing machine and sew. To finish the raw edge of the fabric, we'll create another crease a 1/4 inch from that raw edge. So it's, in a way, this is a double hem, but notice that that second fold doesn't go all the way to the crease that we created earlier. And this will finish the edge and allow for the cording rope to run through the sleeve nicely. Then we take it to the sewing machine. We'll use the magnetic guide to position it so that we can keep our stitches nice and straight, and then put our foot down on the sewing machine and sew a 6mm straight stitch right along that folded edge, the inside edge. And when you're feeding it through the machine, be sure that it is being creased right where you intend it to be creased. We don't want the fabric to wander, so go slowly, and every foot or so just ensure that the fabric is creasing where you created the creases. For this stitch, at the beginning we did some reverse stitching to lock our stitch in place, and we also want to do some reverse stitching here at the end as well. We'll be creating a second stitch right next to that first stitch, approximately a 1/4 inch away, and we'll use that magnetic guide to help guide us with this stitch as well. Do some reversing here at the beginning and also some reversing at the end as well. Be sure that second stitch is not too close to where we're going to be inserting our rope cord. We want to allow enough space for it to slide through the sleeve. If you've already marked the 1 3/4 inch on the opposite side, you want to confirm that that measurement is correct. So here we're confirming that our finished size will end at 19.5 inches for our particular chair. If you haven't marked it, go ahead and mark it exactly as you did the other side. We've placed that mark on the right side of the chair. We flip the chair so the wrong side is facing up, and we'll create a crease following that line just as we did the previous side. And then we create a 1/4 inch hem the same way we did before. Take it to your sewing machine and do the exact same procedure. No need to show all this, we're going to skip ahead. Now that both of the sleeves are created, we're going to push our old rope cord into the sleeve. This is why it's important not to sew that second stitch too close to the sleeve, because it would be very difficult to push or pull your rope cording into the sleeve if it were too tight. Some customers prefer to place the cording in the sleeve while they're sewing it. I typically do not. You can use a small string to pull the cording through if it doesn't have much body to it. This is the portion of the chair with the channel, and you notice the holes on the one side are for the tension bars, and these holes on the opposite are for the main frame. So we want to slide the cover through the channel so that the hems are on the same side as the side of the frame that has the mini holes for the tension bars. So be sure to slide it through the right side facing the way you want it to, because otherwise you have to pull it out and re-slide it through if you get it facing the wrong way. There are quite a few curves. We want to start the fabric on the side that has the fewer curves.
There's no crook there. We're starting from the smoothest side, this direction. So that should be in from here, like this.
Again, we're confirming that we're putting this frame together so that it's facing the right direction, so that the multiple holes are facing towards the back of the chair, and the two holes that will attach to the main frame are facing towards the top of the fabric. Here it is, with the fabric slid into the channels. Only a few steps left. We're going to take to the main frame, where we're going to use those same bolts to fasten it to the chair. I typically don't like to fasten it down all the way yet until we are assured that the fabric is running in the channel the way we want it to. So I'm only going to start these bolts. And we'll start them here on the bottom side, and we'll go to the back of the chair and start the bolts on the back side as well. There are 4 bolts for this chair. Yours may have more or fewer. Doubtful, but possible. Again, I don't tighten these down all the way, I leave a little bit of slack. Okay, now that the bolts are partly tightened, we'll go and we'll concentrate on being sure that the fabric is pulled to the extreme end. It's not uncommon for the piping cord to stick out. We're going to cut that off when we're done. But you can use pliers here and gently pull on the fabric to ensure that the fabric is coming up right against the edge. This is sometimes why I like to leave the fabric a little bit shorter than the overall length of the chair, so that I don't have too much fabric sticking over the end, because the only thing you can do to modify that is to actually start re-sewing it. Then once we're happy, we'll tighten down those 4 bolts that attach to the main frame. So tighten them down hard. Don't panic, you're not done yet. The chair is not quite tight. We're going to need to install the tension bars next. Now, some of our customers will actually bend the tension bars and then use a hammer to straighten them back out again. We're actually just going to use a car jack here, and we're going to tighten it to the point where we can install the tension bars into the holes that they fit into. There are special tools that do this, but we just wanted to show you that it can be done with just a common car jack that we took out of an SUV. You'll also notice that the jack was not quite long enough, so we had to fashion a few boards to create a little bit more length for the jack to install each one of these tension bars. Our tensioning bar had some washers, so we're installing the washers onto the ends of the tensioning bar and then positioning it in one hole, and then we tighten the jack to raise it so that it helps to tension the fabric. And we want to apply just enough pressure that the opposite end will slip into the hole. You notice it takes quite a lot of pressure to pull the fabric nice and tight. We're almost to the maximum extension for our jack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bar and bend it slightly on my knee so that I can shrink it up a little bit to get the tension bar to fit into the holes.
What you can do to the bar is you can bend it slightly to shrink it up, just if you don't want to stretch it anymore.
Notice just by bending it slightly with my knee, it now fits. Now we'll release the jack, and the fabric will shrink up a little bit so that it's nice and tight. Now, because we bent it with our knee, we're going to take a rubber mallet and we're going to pound the bar in the center to kind of extend its length.
What you do now is, if you don't feel like it's tight enough, it's pretty tight, but if you didn't feel like it was tight enough, you could take a rubber mallet, since you bent it slightly, and you go, and that tightens it up even more. So, there we go. So there's one, and it's nice and tight.
The next tension bar we'll concentrate is underneath the seat of the chair. So we're going to put the jack in here the exact same way we did previously. I have the boards on the small end of the jack. I later learned that it was better to put the boards underneath the base of the jack so they won't flip out. But this works okay. You just have to be careful that the end of the jack, when it comes under tension, doesn't flip out. And here this one fit nicely, and I didn't even have to bend the tension bar. Now I'm releasing the pressure and the bar goes tight. If you don't think the bar is tight enough, you can always take that rubber mallet and give it a few blows with the mallet to tension up the bar even more. Now here I discovered that it's better to take our extra boards to extend obviously the length of our jack and put them underneath the base of the jack instead of the head of the jack. And this way it helps to prevent them from slipping out from underneath the head. Now we tighten it up here. Now these tensioning bars are a little bit different than the normal tensioning bars that we had at the head and underneath the seat. They actually are attached to each other, but the procedure is exactly the same. And look out, Seth, I'm going to hit you on the head with the jack.
Watch your face.
Yeah, I know.
That.
Alright, the first side of this tensioning bar bracket is in. Now we'll do the last tensioning bracket. So this chair has 4 tensioning brackets to make it nice and tight. Be sure you position your jacks very close to the holes, otherwise you're stretching part of the chair that doesn't really need to be stretched. So we would just want that jack as close to the holes as possible without impeding with the tension bars when we go to insert them into the slots. You notice that everywhere we have a metal piece of the jack contacting the metal frame, we use a rag to help prevent scratching the chair. This chair is probably about 5 to 10 years old, I don't know for sure, but the frame's in great shape. Needs a little bit of touch-up paint, but that's it. That's why it's always a good idea to replace the fabric, because the fabric usually will wear out much faster than the aluminum frame. And there we are, it's done. Remove the jack and let's test it out. We still have to install some end caps, but we'll show you that next. Much of the fabric vinyl material that you get from a department store is not nearly as high a quality as the Phifertex material you get from Sailrite. Now the fabric's under great tension and it should be a nice comfortable chair. Seth's going to check it out. Nice. Now let's cut the ends of the rope cord. This is kind of a hard foam with some wire cutters, and then we'll get ready to install the end caps back on. Make sure it's flush. And then we're going to install the end caps that were previously on the chair and also the end caps that were on top of the bolt heads. Here are the chairs done. With only 1.4 yards of Phifertex Plus material, we completed 2 chairs. With V92 polyester thread and Phifertex Plus and a good sewing machine, you too can make your own replacement slings for your patio furniture. I'm Eric Grant with Sailrite. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to order all your supplies from Sailrite. Thanks again.